Good evening, everyone. Today is December 14th, 2021, and this is the Olivet City Hall meeting for the evening. If we could please have roll call.
Councilmember Carl.
Here.
Councilmember Waldman. Here. Councilmember Knox.
Here.
Chairman Pro Tem Weil.
Here.
Mayor.
Here.
Item number 2 is communications, and Mayor, we have no written communications.
Okay.
Item number 3 is the city manager's report.
Thank you. Give it 1 second. Let me just bring this up. Shoot. 1 moment. I just need to share the screen. Okay. All right. Sorry, it's just taking a little longer tonight for the computer to come up. All right, there we are. Okay, well, we have a new member at the seat, our new council member at the dais anyway. On November 16th, the city council appointed Rick Knox to serve out the term vacated by Ruth Springer. Council member Knox attended his actual first meeting on December 7th, last Tuesday. It was a work session. This is his first regular meeting tonight. And earlier this evening at about 5 p.m. when the filing closed, we have 2 people who have filed for the 2 vacancies in the April 2022 election. That is Missy Waldman and Rick Knox. Just to let we've talked about this a couple of times, I think, in kind of closed session. I think I've had it maybe in a previous city manager's report, but just to again talk with you folks about the staff's working with Access Engineering, which is now Trek Engineering, on road improvements at North Price and Olive Boulevard. You may remember we've talked about these in when we spoke about the Opus project. We have some funding from them to kind of work with the preliminary engineering. We've got kind of more of a conceptual engineering done, and that's just enough to allow the city to apply for a CMAQ funding, and that's really a clean air grant. It's very similar to the surface transportation grants that we have received for Old Bonham and Dealman. It's also similar funding to the TAP grant, which is the transportation alternative, which we received for the Centennial Greenway in Indian Meadows Park. So as we move forward, again, these are pretty preliminary sketches. These really are just kind of sketches. We know that that in general things will work, but we have a lot more work to do, and we're kind of just now putting together a draft grant application so that we can talk about it with East West Gateway in early January. The grant would be due, I believe it is in March. So I don't have figures or anything for you on that. There is a lot going on around the town. The Centennial Greenway, the portion from Dealman Road to Warson Park, engineering is about 95% complete. We're really working through the environmental aspects now, trying to get that done so that we can begin right-of-way work in early 2022. Most of the right-of-way work in there is going to deals with the properties along Huron, as the trail will go kind of behind those properties. The Centennial Greenway section from I-170 to Dealman Road, as you are aware, we've had a setback because of a failed railroad purchase. We're reviewing alternative routes. And again, I anticipate this work being complete within the next 1 to 2 months, and we'll be back on track with the engineering for that. Last week, the department heads held their mid-year goals, objective, key performance indicator review. It was kind of the first time we've done really stopped mid-year to do a kind of a progress analysis. I think it was very helpful. I think what we're going to do is it allows us to kind of really see where we are, set some timeframes for achieving the goals that we want to achieve, and also to be a little more realistic and realize that there are going to be some goals we're just not going to be able to achieve this year, and kind of knowing that up front and rearranging. Sometimes that's because we were maybe a little too aggressive. We had a couple reach goals that we're not going to make. Sometimes it's because other things came up and moved ahead in the priority list. So we'll be kind of going back over that, and I anticipate in one of the earlier months, we'll be reviewing that with council. New payroll software. I couldn't remember if I've talked about this really before, but we haven't upgraded in our payroll software. It's nice. We've had, I think we've done our 3rd payroll now, working on our 3rd payroll. We've completed 2. There has been, it's really been really smooth. Denise Mandel, Tanya Welch have been working on that. Denise has kind of been heading up that project. It's gone really well. And the nice part with the software is it enables employees to really access a lot more information in real time, which has been kind of an issue sometimes for us in the past. The council's aware that our building inspector, David Fairgrieve, took a new position in Brentwood. We anticipate the posting for his job ended today. I anticipate we'll have interviews quickly. In the meantime, we have engaged with the Institute for Building Technology and Safety to assist with some of our permit reviews. That person started yesterday and it's gone pretty smoothly. He's also a local person, and so our current building inspector actually knew him and has worked with him, so it's good. This is the project dashboard for the community center, Warson Park improvements, along with and it includes the Centennial Greenway. This is a monthly dashboard. You may, if it looks familiar, it's because we had the similar dashboard with the community center project. Navigate puts these together. Our project manager puts these together for us at the beginning of each month. And so it gives you a nice little synopsis of kind of where we are, how we're doing on this. You know, the first box is our project schedule, how we're doing with the schedule, what we've done to date. So we've demoed the park house, trees been removed. They have the walking path and the GRG trail laid out. That retaining wall that was behind the Saints lot is gone. And the building pad excavation and sod remediation has begun. And if you drive down there, even from the groundbreaking, it looks different, significantly different. Upcoming work, this kind of gives you a sense of kind of where we're at. Footings and foundations will be happening, the storm and sanitary work, grading, etc. The next box is submittals and requests for information. And that's really those, a submittal may be something where there needs to be a change, or there are some questions on things. The requests for informations are just that, you know, looking for additional information. And we track those. That's all through a computer software system that the subcontractor may enter in a question. It will then go to that appropriate discipline, and then it will be answered. And the same is true. It works kind of in two-way, three-way conversation on that, and has been working well. We haven't had too many things out of the ordinary. Looks at the financials, the anticipated, if we have anticipated contract modifications. So these may be possible change orders that may or may not occur. You know, and these could be plus or minuses at this point. And we don't really kind of get into that because we're just letting you know that these things are kind of on our watch list, where they may end up being a change in scope, which could be a change in costs. At this point, we don't see any of our contingency, our unforeseen conditions allowance. We anticipate we probably will have something there, and that is because of the soil compaction issues that we found. So we anticipate there probably will be a change there. And then it looks at the regular contingency. So really the whole goal of this, then we go into the pay applications. I think as of this time, we've only had one, at the time of this, December 1st, we had one pay application. We've actually had two now. And so this just tells you kind of where we're at in that scope. And then it highlights in that last box, what are the risks that we foresee? And these are risks that the project manager will say, well, these are things we need to watch. And you'll see here, lead time for pre-engineered metal building for the maintenance facility. Cost increases are driving of design change to all new alternative materials. We kind of talked about that. The maintenance facility was going to be a prefab kind of metal building that's now expensive. We're actually doing constructing our own building and it's being cheaper. And then it talks about kind of what our responsibilities are right now. And you'll see in that, you'll see some of those specialty items we've talked about, the fitness equipment, the audiovisual system. We have IT networking that's starting, our furniture procurement. And as you're aware, we've just done the signed the agreement for the playground equipment and the outdoor and indoor. This is, I will go ahead and I'll probably email this out to you folks so you can look at it a little more closely, because this is for you. This is the information that you guys need. So if there's something you don't understand or something that you don't see that you'd like to see, just need to let me know and we'll get that to navigate and we'll get that, we'll get it changed. These are pictures then that come with that report, progress photos. And it's interesting looking at these, even though it's December 14th. So it's, 13 days from December 1st when it was done. The pictures are really different now if you were to go out there. And then recent events, we had the groundbreaking, as you're aware. These are just a couple of photos from that event. It was a really nice event. It was cold. I remember the cold. It was very, very cold. A very nice event, except for the cold. Then there was a turkey trot, which was not nearly as cold as the groundbreaking. The turkey trot. Oh, you know what? I was rearranging these photos and I ended up, the one photo I wanted on here was the check display. We ended up raising $14,000 for the Harvey Kornblum Food Pantry. This was the first year, that picture in the upper left is the first year of our Tiny Tots, our Tiny Tot Trot. And so that was a blast. Got a lot of positive feedback on that. And then just people participating. Again, really great event. It is, you work a lot of hours and it's over in a couple. Bring these all up because they're not in order. We have a Park and Recreation Commission meeting tomorrow night. Following that, on Thursday night, we have a Planning and Community Design Commission meeting. The offices are closed on December 24th because the holiday is actually a Saturday, so we close that Friday before. Next, we will talk later about whether or not we need a December 28th council meeting. I spoke with the mayor and the pro tem about that, and they'll make a decision later tonight on that. As soon as I hit this one more time, it's going to go away. We have, our offices again are closed on December 31st, again, because the first being a holiday is on a Saturday, so we're closed Friday. Next council work session is January 4th at 7 PM. Planning and Community Design Commission is January 6th. And the first regular council meeting of 2022 is January 11th at 7 PM. Happy to entertain any questions. Oh, as a side note too, we are in the this is our last pass for leaves this week, and then we'll be completely done this year. Hendel will be working probably through Saturday on that. Leaves really fell with the second pass. So, but we anticipate getting it all done this week.
Are there any questions from citizens? or any comments at this time?
We're at city council reports.
Could I follow up with a question to the city? My question deals with that beautiful path that has been getting created on Dillman Road down from City Center to Dillman Industrial, right
Mhm.
next to Indian Meadows. And it looks beautiful. However, we still have the puddles and the fishing ponds that tend to get created there when we have heavy rain.
Mhm.
What are we going to do about that? I mean, that's been something we've been aware of. I've seen those puddles for the longest time. You know, I don't know whether some other level of grading or whether there's going to be something put in there to absorb that amount of moisture that tends to build up there at that particular spot. Do we have any ideas on that yet, Barb?
There'll be some additional grading work that'll occur. There's also going to be some swales, rain gardens and that type of thing put in there as well. Mhm.
Prior to Thanksgiving, I attended the November 17th Parks Recreation Commission meeting. We voted at that time, our annual, they voted at that time. And Jim Person is going to continue as the commission chairperson, and Travis Neal is going to be the vice chairperson. Beverly Tucker Knight, the director, gave a report that encompassed the Parks and Pollinators, the Harvest Festival and Boo Bash, which was a success. The Eagle Scout Box, that's a tongue twister, the Basketball League status, and the Bradford pear removal at the community center. They discussed the seasonal parks operation. Weed Warriors is up and going again. I believe they were out last weekend. The Dusk to Dawn sky gazing program at Stacy Park, which was coordinated with the police department in developing the guidelines to allow the dusk to dawn stargazing at Stacy Park, which was really also another new and exciting thing we did. We also, they gave a report that we received a proclamation on behalf of the city from the St. Louis County Council on November 16th in recognition for Stacy Park being certified as an urban night sky place by the IDA. We also discussed in detail the park master plan implementation, which they go through monthly at their report, at their meetings. And it was a very thorough meeting. And following that was the turkey trot and our next meeting, which is tomorrow night. And then the big date night for families is Kids Night Out on the 17th in 2 days. And it was sold out really quick this year. So.
Yes, I attended the zoning board of adjustment meeting on December 9th. The applicant was seeking a variance for an in-ground swimming pool. Our ordinance requires it be no less than 12 feet from the property line. This was it was granted by the zoning board of adjustment. The hardship was the fact that this lot, and not being a corner lot, still is a very odd shaped lot, which resulted in the calculation of the rear setback being extreme for basically what we're after. And I was recognized by the Board of Adjustment that that was the case, and they granted the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to follow up with that conversation from the Zoning Board of Adjustments, the Community Design Commission itself also had its workshop, which is typically time for discussion items. And two of those discussion items were site coverage for pools with smaller lot sizes. And so that conversation continues with the Planning Community Design Commission. Also, their discussion with regard to Chapter 420 and stream buffer regulations. So those conversations continue. Also, what was reported by Mr. Trejo was that Olive Crossing has applied for permits on the apartments in the parking garage. Opus owns all the properties for their development, and as we can all see, the fence has been placed around the area. Birdie Lane, there will be a second home being submitted in January to the Planning and Community Design Commission. Easy Storage is coming to the council in December to request Chapter 100. Plant Haven is putting decking on their building at this time. The Oliver is looking at completion of their building in February and looking at occupancy by March. And it is my understanding that there will be some rezoning needed on some potential redevelopment that is, my understanding, all the property is owned by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Cohen across the street from us. And we should be looking forward to that coming to the city shortly as well. Mr. Trejo provides a very good summary to the council if they wish to go back and look at that review as well. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the work that this body does. And that is my report for today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, I have nothing to report there.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Darren Mann, and I'm the Finance Director for the city. And before us, we have taking a look at our, what would be 5 months into our fiscal year 22, so the end of November. Revenues are exceeding expectations by $339,000. And then the expenditures are below our expectations at $131,000. So for a net positive variance of $471,000. The big update, I guess I'd say more than anything, is our other income category is now exceeding our expectations, which is a change from last month. And that's because of a larger than expected at the time of budgeting from Slate of a refund of our insurance from our self-insurance pool. We look at our dashboard there in the gray. You'll see everything's meeting up about with expectations where we would expect to be with 5 months of our 12 down. Property taxes, you can see there, are slow at zeros except for the general fund, and that's only because of the collection from the county for the fire protection at Elmwood Park. Only the billing, what we charge St. Louis County for the fire protection at Elmwood Park, just north of us. Yep. We had a very large back charge toward the end of the beginning of our year here. And so we haven't actually received any cash from the county. That's ramping up now into December. And I think I'm sure that we'll still make our budgeted figures. So we'll be talking about that in the next couple months. In our next page at the top, we'll see our reserve policy, and we're well within compliance there. We expected to be at 2.7 million in excess of the reserve policy, and we're about 3.1 million, 3.2. And then as we kind of move through here, our revenue, big 4 categories. Sales tax remain high, and kind of an update as we see here, our other stuff is doing well too. And in here would be use tax, and our gas tax is doing better than we thought for budget. And the property taxes, I just talked about those. Utility taxes also, that was our chart of the month last month. Electric receipts for our gross receipts are doing well, and they continue into November. And then I talked about the other income, that remainder. On the expenditure side, we are seeing the salaries and taxes are in, then on the legal category is lower than we had thought at this time. A little bit of timing of what happened at the beginning of the year is affecting that. But then we do have some vacancies in that police and fire department that the police and fire chief are working. They're working the schedules to avoid that overtime. So we don't see the overtime, but we do see the salaries benefit there. Outside of our general fund, outside of a 1%, I did bring in a chart of the month. And this is our fire operations sales tax. We have two others of these that kind of follow this, which is the capital improvement sales tax, and that stormwater park sales tax. The charts look the same. And what we see in this orange not filled line is, you can see it's better off than it was. So the sales taxes are quietly having a good year, and we hope that continues. One of our best Septembers that we've ever had followed the best August we'd ever had. I always say it's hard in the first couple months to say whether things are going good or bad, but it appears that things in these other sales tax categories are doing well. And so that means that was not anticipated. So they are beating expectations there. That bodes well for a lot of the capital programs that these are expected. We're expecting them to fund. So that's all that I have for the monthly finance report. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions from the council? Okay, do we have any
you.
questions from the? Okay, all right. Will there be any questions or comments from our citizens at this time? Okay, seeing none.
I see no hands up, Mayor.
Okay.
Item number 7 then is Bill number 2963, an ordinance authorizing the city of Olivet, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial revenue bonds, 9538 Olive Boulevard project, series 2021, in a principal amount not to exceed $8 million for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring, constructing, and improving a facility for an industrial development project in the city, approving a plan for the project, and authorizing the city to enter into certain agreements and take certain other actions in connection therewith.
Okay. I would ask for a motion, please.
Yeah, no,
This is-
what we, the clerk just read it for the first time. I would like to talk about the bill just a little bit, and then I would like to request that the council set aside regular rules and read the bill for a second time.
Okay.
I would like to bring over, we have Mark Spikerman with Gilmore and Bell. He's the attorney that we use to for these. We also have Paul Martin here. And I believe is, Libby, if you can hear me, are you representing Armstrong? And if you are, could you just raise your hand? She is. All right. I'm going to promote you to a panelist as well then, Libby.
Is Armstrong for easy storage?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and William Bowman is on as well. I apologize. I didn't get that. Okay. So, and Bill, I'm bringing you over as well. I hope you hope you're prepared. This is a Chapter 100 agreement with the easy storage. As the council is aware, we've been talking about this kind of for a while. It would be a 7 or 5-story building that would be at the in between the bowling alley and Dobbs. The bottom portion would have some retail space in it. What the council has before you is you have the ordinance itself, you have the redevelopment agreement, you have a number of other pieces, you have the plan, you have the cost benefit analysis, you will note that currently the cost benefit analysis and the redevelopment agreement call for pilot payments, annual pilot payments of $100,000. Those are split between the various taxing districts. That is more than the property is producing today. And with that, I'm actually going to kick it over to either Mark or Paul, whoever would like to take this, to talk just a little bit more about the plan. And then if you folks have any questions, we do have William Bowman, who is with Easy Storage. You might remember Bill. And then Libby is with Armstrong Teasdale and is the attorney representing that.
I nominate Mark.
Thank you, Paul. As Paul and Barb mentioned, I'm Mark Spikerman. I'm an attorney at Gilmore and Bell, and I represent the city as outside bond counsel on this matter. The ordinance before you utilizes a tool that we refer to as Chapter 100. The city's used it before on the City Center project as one example. Whenever we use Chapter 100, it involves the issuance of bonds that are payable only from lease payments made by the developer, not by the city. These bonds are not payable from any tax revenues at all. They're solely payable from those lease payments. The bonds are not necessarily there to finance the project, but to facilitate a tax abatement. In this case, as Barb mentioned, tax abatement with a structured pilot schedule. In years 1 through 5 of the abatement period, there would be a $100,000 pilot each year, payment in lieu of tax. Those pilots would be split between the various taxing entities pro rata based on their tax levy. Based on our estimates of assessed value upon completion of the project, that translates to roughly about a 45% tax abatement. In years 6 through 10, the pilots go from 100 to 136,000, and the estimated percentage of abatement drops to about 35%. And then in years 11 through 15, the estimated the pilots go from 136,000 up to 200,000, causing the estimated percentage of abatement to be roughly only about 15%. As we negotiated this deal, having a set fixed schedule of pilots was a big sticking point for the developer. The Chapter 100 ordinance has, as Barb mentioned, several exhibits, several documents. Whenever we do a bond issue, there's leases, indentures, and bond purchase agreements. The document that contains the business deal is called the Development and Performance Agreement. Barb's got it up on the screen, looks like right now, the pilot schedule.
I'll bring that up, Mark.
Just a couple of points to hit on this document. It requires completion of the project by the end of 23. We understand, the developer can speak for himself, but we understand they anticipate meeting that goal by several months. They will have to employ minority and women-owned contractors as part of the construction of the project. And then, as I know members of the council know, there's about a 6,000 square foot portion of the project that will have retail sort of storefront bays. This agreement in section 3.9 requires that at least 50% of that space be used for businesses that generate sales tax, unless the developer is successful in attracting what we refer to as an amenity retailer. And then if they have that amenity retailer and it takes up a smaller portion, but it generates probably significant sales tax at that point, less than 50% would be permitted. And for amenity retailers, you can read that paragraph D on the screen. You're looking at furniture, clothing, sporting goods, food and beverage, those type of amenity retailers. We understand, and developer can speak to this himself, but we understand that if this were approved tonight, developer would secure its construction financing And we would likely close on the issuance of the bonds within a couple months. I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can turn it over to the developer.
The council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Mark, how are you doing, sir?
Good.
Mark, for the public, I want you to identify pilot money and where that money will go.
So that will, that you can scroll to that table there, Barb. You can see that schedule with pilots ranging from 100,000 in years 1 through 5 to 200,000 in years 11 through 15. That will get split pro rata based on tax levies. So for example, if the school district's tax levy currently makes up roughly 60% of the total tax bill, then 60% of that 100,000 would go to the school district. And if the city's made up 10%, the city would get 10%. If the county's made up 10%, it would get 10%, and so on.
So you're identifying every single taxing district that the county has on its, on our
We
tax.
do,
roll.
and
So we
as
get
part
the
of,
percentage.
as part of the approval of a Chapter 100, a cost benefit analysis, which is included as Exhibit A to the ordinance, was prepared. That lists all the commercial property tax rates and sets out how based on 2021 tax rates, if those tax rates were to remain in place throughout the entire term of the abatement, how the money would be distributed.
Thank you for making that public. Thank you.
And copies of that were sent to all the taxing districts as well.
My question was more about the bond. Is it normal to take a couple months? I know that we're kind of biting at the bit to get this going. Can it be done quicker than a couple months? And if it does take a couple months, how soon after that could they break ground and begin construction? Or do they anticipate breaking ground and beginning construction?
Well, I'll start and then I'll hand over to the developer real quick. Typically, well, if this ordinance is passed tonight, there's authorization at any time going forward to issue the bonds. Typically, from a practical matter, what we see is because the issuance of the bonds involves leases and transfer of title, that it's easiest to close that transaction simultaneously with the developer's construction loan, because the developer's lender will want to put a deed of trust on before all those leases start gumming up the property. And I'll defer to the developer on timing.
Right, and that's just typically especially given the time of year right now with the holidays and such, it's just before you blink, it's a couple months getting all the paperwork done and getting the construction loan, because it has to go to the committees and stuff at the bank. We use the same construction lender for all our projects. So I think that's a reasonable amount of time that it'll take. And then we then have to do our final engineering and structural engineering, submit for submit for permits. So we're probably, weather permitting, early spring start construction by the time we get all our permits and all that
Thank
in
you.
place.
Besides, I don't want you working in winter when it's cold and it's frozen.
Well, it's going to take that long. I don't know if you've ever submitted for permits before, but it takes, once we get the structural design done, that takes a couple months, and then you submit it. Then the permits are it's not a fast process. I mean,
And then when you submit to St. Louis County, St. Louis County right now is extremely slow and behind, and God knows for the permits you need with St. Louis County, not the city of Olivet. How long is that going to take? I hear the stories and the frustration of that every single day. The county is so far behind.
Yep, the county, they're kind of going at their own pace right now. I mean, we're running into that with other projects. So, I mean, and it is frustrating. I will tell you that's not a great thing.
The permitting process here in Olivet is incredibly streamlined and
Yes.
expedited. So yeah, just so you know.
Yep. The city part of it will be the easy part of it. Not easy, but
And
it'll
you
be the
actually get to
faster.
talk to live people in the city of Olivet as well.
Right. Right. Yes.
Mayor, if there aren't any other questions, I would again request that the council set aside regular rules and read the bill for a second time.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that the council set aside ordinary rules and read Bill 2963 for a second time tonight.
I second that.
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman,
Yes,
Councilmember Knox,
Yes.
Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
motion passed.
And Mayor, at this point, it'd be appropriate to ask the public if they have any comments on the pending bill.
Or any comments from the public on the pending bill at this time?
Mayor, we had one written comment that came in. I'm not sure if it was from Christopher Stokes, who lives at 5 Covington Lane. He's opposed to the easy storage development. He's concerned with regard to the Chapter 100 incentives, and wants to know why, if it was developed in other locations without the aid, why is it necessary here? He talks about other developments that have been done without incentives. And so he would request that he would hope that the council would request the developer arrange for his own financing instead of relying upon the city to fund the development. And so that's the only comment I've received from the public.
Duly noted.
And I believe, Mayor, Denise, did you take roll call? Okay, then we just need the bill to be read for a second time by the clerk.
Okay. Bill number 2963, an ordinance authorizing the city of Olivet, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial revenue bonds, 9538 Olive Boulevard project, series 2021, in a principal amount not to exceed $8 million for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring, constructing, and improving a facility for an industrial project in the city, approving a plan for the project, and authorizing the city to enter into certain agreements and take certain other actions in connection therewith.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve Bill 2963, an ordinance authorizing the city of Olivet, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial revenue bonds for the 9538 Olive Boulevard project, series 2021, in a principal amount not to exceed $8 million for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring, constructing, and improving a facility for an industrial development project in the city, approving a plan for the project, and authorizing the city to enter into certain agreements and take certain other actions in connection therewith.
Do you have a second?
I second that motion.
All right, poll the council.
Member Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman,
yes,
Councilmember Knox,
Yes.
Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
motion passed. By action of the Olivet City Council, Bill number 2953 becomes ordinance number 2736.
Mr. Mayor, if I could follow up with one thing. Mr. Bowman, Mr. Stokes asked a question according to how, what Ms. Sondag read. And he asked why you were asking for this. Do you want to answer that question, sir?
Well, I think the primary reason and why we were asking for having a set pilot payment amount is that we've been having significant problems with the assessor and with absolutely crazy assessments that then we have to go fight. And based on those things, without having a set tax amount, it would be impossible to get financing on this
Thank you,
project.
sir.
Thank you, folks. Unless you have anything else to say, I'm gonna move you back to attendees and you'll be able to enjoy the rest of our meeting. I'm sure you'll stay on.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your help and work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 8, approval of financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2021.
Good evening once again, Mayor and Council. My name is Darren Mann, and I'm the Finance Director for the city. And we have our financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2021 in front of us. We enjoyed the company of Alan Schulte from Bot Steel and Company last week. And so that's a regular attendee here at this meeting where we approve our financial statements. But due to some scheduling conflicts and being able to have him for undivided for the night, we moved it up this year. And I won't be taking that long as he took, but maybe only like half that. So it just goes by in a blur. So we're gonna go through about, let's see, 7 or 8 pages. That's it. So page 6. First, it's one of those documents that if you have just 10 pages to read the first 10 pages, and I think you'll get a good gist of where it's going. If you find yourself curious after that, then feel free to get in a little further. I'm more than happy to walk through these in hours-long conversations any time of the year. So with that, we can see here, most of these financial statements are broken down into our government-wide financial statements, which are full accrual, and that's what you'd expect to see from any publicly held company or private company. And then they also go into governmental financial statements. And the governmental is more or less cash basis, and that's what we report on our monthly financial reporting. If we go again to the full accrual government-wide look at year over year, it comes down to 2 things. One, we issue debt, and when you issue debt, you get cash. And so that's what we see here. Our current and other assets went up $16.3 million. And then our long-term liabilities went up about $16 million. It's only the difference is only $14 million. That's point number 1 we'd see here. Point number 2, I'd like to bring up here, and we'll talk about here in a little bit, is the amount of grant money that we received this year went up a lot, and that contributed to the $2.8 million increase, which is the very lower right part of this table. That number, that's the increase in our net position, which is you think of like a net income number in a public company. And this money, we did issue debt, they'll have to be repaid. And so part of that repayment is an increase in taxes to the citizens and commercial property owners in the city. And so that's one reason the revenue went up because we began repaying that. And the other reason is the grants. So if we move to page 7 from there, you can see that $2.8 million at the lower right again. And this is an income statement. Look at this. Our taxes have went up, and that's the middle number under the revenues. That was because our sales taxes did well, and also because we increased our debt levy just a hair because of the no tax increase financing. That doesn't mean that the debt levy didn't go up, because the assessments went up in between that time of setting rates and what we had promised the voters. From there, the expenses here, they're showing a decrease. And again, full accrual. This includes all of the reflection of all the past history, which is amortized out over several years of the pension. The pension had a good year because the pension assets and the trust had a good year and had a good return. And that lowers the cost for that year when we're looking at full accrual and expenditure side. And so that's why we show a decrease in there on those. If we go to page 8, it's a chart we've seen many times over the years. During budgeting, we see it a lot. And here is a chart. The red line is our sales taxes, and then the blue line below that is our utility taxes. with the slow and steady property taxes there in green, and that remainder category that always looks like a snake. And we see those over most of the increase in the purple. That remainder is from the GEMT receipts for a ground medical transport grant, which is through the state, but essentially a federally funded reimbursement for our ambulance. And then the story of the sales taxes, where we see a large increase up to 2018, which was actually our peak, and then a steady decline. 19 it declined, and then 20 again, just as the pandemic was kind of closing things down, but then recovered well, as most of what we're seeing and hearing is spending has done very well over the last year.
If I could ask you a question on GMT?
Yeah.
Is that my understanding, and I'm not saying I'm the expert, my understanding is that GMT is for Medicaid recipient reimbursement for travel, not for private insurance. So this tells me that we've got some Medicaid folks here in our area.
Sure. Yeah, we can do a little bit more research into that, the actual figures. It's very interesting, the factors that go into that. And I think there's probably like 3 experts in the whole world with GEMT. So you're not alone there. It's a very strange program, but you're right. It is not for private entities, it's only for public entities like ourselves that do ground medical or do ambulance transport. Yep. So let's see from there, our reserve policy, which we talk about every month, we can see it in a chart form with actual audited figures, and that's on page 10. We should talk about this now because Barb
wait.
pauses on it.
Sorry.
No, it's
I
fine.
thought it was on the wrong-
It's a good chart because it shows more than anything, this line, if we remember, the blue line, it closely mirrors with what our sales tax line looks like. Whenever you see a widening gap right here, especially when you see expenditures increasing, you see lack of confidence in your revenue. And that's exactly how I would describe our sales tax increases since 2017. Whenever these get narrow, we're really, really confident that our revenues and our expenditures are going to be good. And so we budget pretty narrow according to that. Now, again, if we were looking back in FY20 and FY21, the council approved a budget deficit of $120,000. What changed since then was the receipt of the grant funding from the county, and that's most of that spread there. We also we exceeded our sales tax projections, and so that's the rest of that big tail up, or that spread between the blue and the red lines.
Just real quick, while you're mentioning sales tax again,
Yeah.
I just wanted to note the comment that Alan made last week, which was, although he sees sales tax improving, since he has a more general view across governments, although he sees sales tax improving generally, he is not seeing improvements like we are seeing everywhere. So I just want to
Maybe.
point that out.
Which further feeds into that lack of confidence of its staying power and its how we got to our reserve policy, how we got to a lot of these things about how we budget, and it's worked out fairly well, I think, for us, and it's been very nice to have over the last several years. We look at our reserve policy here. Notable here, we're definitely in compliance as we talk about it month over month as we look at this next year. And the blue line is where we project the revenues and declines, revenues and expenditures, which is a decline slightly over those next 5 years. So I would expect to see deficit spending on a fairly large fund balance as we go into there. One of the bigger things that was included here with this, the forecasting this year, was the inclusion of a lot of these development projects permit fees, which are very large. And also of the opening of the community center. So this is full reflection of those additional revenues and expenditures according to the pro forma from Ballard King that we're using thus far. From there, we're going to go to page 18, and that's the big look of the microscopic numbers of not reserve, but of all of our funds. And this is governmental. We're going to skip over the government-wide funds, and we're going to go to the governmental funds. And that's right there. Yep. This is has the general fund and all of our other major funds. There's 6, 7 of them across there. Most notable here, I'll point out, is our general fund. which is the first column on the left. The bigger numbers that we're looking at are the net change in fund balance, which is second from the bottom right now. Yep, is at $53,000 increase. Again, 532,000 of that was because of the municipal relief program from the county, and then sales taxes for the rest of that. You see the transfers there, that line right above. That is where we reflect those the cost, the receipt of that money, and that keeps our expenditures honest, and it keeps them. When we go back in time, which we will here in just a second, it'll keep them comparable year over year. The other thing that we see here is this very middle column. You'll see the issuance of the debt of for the community center, which is for the Prop P money. Yeah, and if we go very to the second to the last number there, or sorry, not the second last, it's right there where the mouse is, right. The other financing sources and uses, you see the issuance of the debt at 15.635 million is what we issued, and then there was some premium in there below that. So we got a lot of cash of about $16.5 million. And then in a little bit above that, we'll see the capital outlay of just over $1 million. So this is where the money gets parked that we issued the debt. And as we spend it, we'll see the money go out in this capital outlay over time. And what this, the interesting thing of how it comes and goes is we'll see governmental funds almost at a standstill at $39,000 into a deficit. So from there, those are two little highlights I'd have on that page. And
Could I just ask a clarifying question?
you bet.
I'm learning. So in this particular arena, when you have something in the parentheses, because you're saying here transfers in, and then you have in parentheses out. That's not a negative. This parenthesis is telling me this amount of money, and I'll use the local stormwater fund where you got parentheses 45,000 on the grant fund where you got parentheses 472,491 and the 529,209. That's just because you took the money out.
For right there, the 45,000.
Yeah.
Yes. When we look at other financing sources and uses, it can be in and out, and that's exactly what you're saying. The transfers in and out there, they net to zero toward the end, to the very last column. So they always net. There's no money or created or spent inside of transfers. It's coming from somewhere and it's going to somewhere. The only time you'll see anything like that, by the way, is in an enterprise fund. You'll see it disappear from there.
Thanks, Dan.
Because these enterprise funds aren't listed here. We don't have any, so there's no money disappearing through the transfers. Yep. Last stop we're going to make before I make a couple high-level points, we'll move on out of the financial statements, is on page 48, and that's with our pension. And on page 48, you'll see this is our pension, the liability, which is toward the top section, and then the assets, the amounts in the trust in the middle section, and then there's some little analytics there toward the bottom. But $3.8 million, and that's on the far left column, about the fifth one from the bottom. That's our net pension liability. And if we go one column to the right, that was last year's, so you can see an improvement of $1 million. The bigger points here, the net total pension liability, which is the first double bar down, it's 27.9 million right there. That's the pension liability. That's the amount of money actuarially determined that we would have to pay if you were shutting this thing down. You can see that number actually went up a little bit on it's more or less the interest cost. I mean, this is we won't get into that very much, but below that, the next double bar is the amount of assets, and that's where we saw the improvement. You can see it right there. It went from $22.3 million in the bank to 24 million. So that was the most of the improvement that we saw in the pension. That gets spread out. It calculates to a 86% funded ratio, if we're looking at it that way. And like Alan mentioned last Tuesday, anything above 80 is green, and green is good in this case. So that's the history of the pension. You can see if anybody is curious there, page 48. Only final thing I'll say is on page, we have a question?
Yeah, Darren, I have a question about the pension. This is just from the end of last year, is that correct?
That's right.
And then there was a good year this year, so it should.
Don't say it. We're not done yet.
Okay, we're close.
Yes, it sure looks that way. We've had some bad 15 days before, but yeah, we sure hope to expect to see some improvement there. Yep.
Okay, very good.
Uh-huh. If we go to page, the back pages of this are really a good pieces of meat. And we're going to go to page 71 because we looked at page 18. If we go to page 71, you can see this is page 18 comparison over time. And when you look at it one at a time, it's really hard, but they want us to look at all the funds at once. But now we look at our governmental funds over time, and you can see a history of, and this starts on page 68, but all the schedules we didn't really look at as much. If we're going to compare over time and say, how is the city doing, there's would be a really good tools for that here toward the end. And it's full of information like that. If we even go a couple more pages to the tax rates, you could see, as a matter of fact, when somebody was, I was sure the question was going to come of how much money are we going to get from that pilot. I keep going just a little bit. You'll see it's a big long list. These are required information. All this stuff is required. But if we go to like right there, here's the tax rate for a residential property owner in most of the city of Olivet. And the city of Olivet's there at the top, $1.27, almost $1.28 per hundred on a total 6.07 is the tax rate. So that calculates to 21%. So 21 cents of the dollar of that pilot comes our way. On the commercial side, you can see the total tax rates, but not the not every single one. It's about 18%. So 18 and about 19 cents on the dollar we're going to get out of that pilot. That's all I have for the financial statements themselves. Other things you'll see on the agenda item are for the management report, and the management report is a report to management from the auditors. There's nothing on here this year. There's no findings or anything like that, but it is a standard fare. It's a required piece of writing, and this is where you'd find anything as far as internal control troubles or any kind of disagreements they might have had with us. I'm happy to report none there. And then the final piece is the single audit report. And the single audit report, there's a lot of work that goes into these 5-6 pages. There's a lot of work that goes into it for us as staff members, because the requirements to issue findings for this, the thresholds are very low. You don't talk your way out of these things. And it's important for the auditors themselves to stay true to this. They have additional people that look over their shoulder even on how they conduct their audits. And you can see here that we the city of Olivet received or expended $1.1 million, and $532,000 of that was for the from the municipal relief program to St. Louis County. Another $593,000 for the surface transportation program, the STP money for Dealman Road, which was the end of Dealman Road. Sorry, finished it, the north part of it. We received money last year. If you receive over $750,000, then you have to have a single audit report. And just a high level kind of view of what they do is they look at every single thing, and everything is in every single transaction that we complete is subject to additional scrutiny. And if they find anything, you would have found out about it inside of this report. And so I think it's a testament to a lot of all of our staff has to follow a lot of rules in order to get bills paid, in order to get paid. And there's a reason for those rules, and they're working. And we got a little bit of a gold star for that. So it's a good job for everybody else. And I'm happy to report that we didn't have any findings this year. With that concludes what I was going to talk about. Where were we at? 15 minutes. I can't believe it.
Do any of our council members have any questions or comments about our finance director's report? Go ahead.
I just want to, sometimes it's hard to understand, like, what does the report mean? And you can look and you can see that, well, the financial statement shows we're in the black, now we're doing well, and all of that. But the reason I think this is a phenomenal year is because you don't always have a single audit. You have to have so much money, that's up $750,000 in grant money. But we always have federal grants. We've always had a number of federal grants. We've had a lot of different SDP grants and police and different things, but they don't always reach that threshold spent within 1 year. They usually get kind of carved over a period of time. What happens then when you get a single audit And they are doing, what they're doing is they're looking at they're looking at your internal controls. They're looking at, are you really following all those grant requirements? And the thing that is really important here is that it takes, everybody has to do everything right to make sure you have no findings in those grants. There are rules about, can you put the grant money in an interest bearing account or not? Do you have to have a separate account? There are rules about how long the period of time in which you have to pay your vendors. There, are all the federal requirements, the Davis-Bacon, all of those things. And that's why it takes so long. And that's why you pay more when you have a single audit. And that's why it's so great this year, because we came off of not having one for a while. And so you can be a little bit more, you can get lax. And because you don't all of a sudden start your fiscal year thinking, oh, well, this year I really need to be watching my controls because we're going to have a single audit. And so it just really shows that everybody is just doing a really good job. And, I can give credit to everyone who touches their grant and, and has that, but I also would always give more credit to the finance department and to Darren, because, he helps with that as well. So just, it's a phenomenal audited financial statement this year.
Yes, and the only thing I'd ask is a motion to approve the financial statements and associated reports as presented tonight.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the financial statements for the year ending in June 30th, 2021.
I'd like to second the motion and amend it with a commendation to the finance department.
Excellent.
Okay, if we could take a roll.
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman,
Yes.
Councilmember Knox,
Yes.
Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
motion passed. Item number 9 is Bill number 2964, an ordinance of the City of Olivet, Missouri, amending the City of Olivet Employee Handbook by adding section 8.6, mandatory COVID-19 vaccine procedure. First reading.
Okay, sorry, just 1 second here. And then I'm going to pass out for the council more paper. No. Mm-mm. So, I want you to know that council is aware, we've talked about this policy number of times. We talked about it last week. There were a couple of questions that Paul and I were still looking at. And so what you have before you in this paper, on the paper and actually on the screen, because I just uploaded it, is the kind of the final. And I just wanted to point that out, the things that have changed since last week. We did a little bit more looking at the testing requirements. The council spent quite a bit of time talking about, the testing, where it should be done, et cetera, et cetera. And we added that to say that the council, essentially, the City of Olivet will administer on-site testing using FDA-approved testing kit. And this is for people who are under either a religious or a medical exemption. So it's a very small number of people, I anticipate, because it's going to be a subset of a subset. And so we made that those would be at the city's cost and time, but if they select their own site, then they would be responsible. They'd be doing it at their own time and at their own cost. The other thing we added is, I realized we didn't have in there, if you have a positive test, what you have to do. So I added that language. And I really think that was pretty much, we did a little language cleanup, because there's nothing that makes Paul happier than editing a document. But that is what I had. Now, you also have, Councilmember Waldman asked for the draft that you were given last week from of the testing one as well. So that's why we're given those two. So with that, this is just a first reading. Happy to answer any questions that you folks might have.
Any questions on the council?
Mr. Mayor, I had a hard time, I've been wishy-washy. I went home that evening and went to sleep and began to think about mandatory and just a COVID-19 testing procedure and policy. I feel there needs to be a little bit more conversation. And the reason for that is because I've been going back and forth. Part of me says, like I asked the last time, the report now is that more policemen are dying from COVID. I know that I've gotten my vaccinations. I know that I'm personally very disturbed when I know that there are other people that don't do what I do to make sure that there's safety and less risk to the people around me. And, I heard the concerns of if we do a mandate, will there be large exodus of what I calculated to be 8 to 9 people. Based on the percentage of what I was told and what was shared, my math came to there's 8, 9, maybe 10 out of the 76 employees we have. And maybe mandating will make 4 of those 8 or 9 go get a vaccine, and maybe the other 4 won't. I've really had a hard time toying with the fact of, do you lose your job? And this morning I did additional research, and I should pull up my phone because part of that research was endemic, pandemic, all these different terminologies for things. And I'm beginning to think that this is kind of like the flu. That we go around and we get flu shots on a regular basis to protect us from the flu. And we go around and we ask kids to take vaccinations. And I'm really beginning to wonder whether a mandate really puts the city at risk of losing employees. So not all infectious diseases terms are created equal. A pandemic is a disease that affects a large number of people within a community, population, or region. A pandemic is an epidemic that spreads over multiple countries or continents. An endemic is something that belongs to a particular people or country. And an outbreak is a greater than anticipated increase in the number of endemic cases. So I don't think COVID is going away. I think we're going to have multiple differences of variants. To me, it is an epidemic. And to me, it still remains a pandemic. But the difference is our scientists have invented things that keep us from dying. And they continue to prove every day that the people that are dying are the people that haven't been vaccinated. So I've been having a very hard time with this, but I think I'm landing in a place of a decision, and I really want to hear how my fellow council members feel about this. And if we don't talk about it today, then I want to hear from you when we discuss this at our second and final consideration of passage.
Are you asking that
No, I think I was leaning towards not looking towards a mandatory, and I think I'm leaning back to looking towards a mandatory, but I've heard the concerns of employees and manpower. And while I'm looking at the mathematics of this being 8 or 10 people, I don't know if mandate will really have 8 people go away, but it's a concern. It's a concern that I hear from other cities. It's a concern that I heard from our city. So that is the biggest wrinkle in my concerns. is, are we going to have that loss of the manpower in public safety where the majority of the unvaccinated are? And I'm making an assumption there. I don't know that for a fact. But is that going to impact us? Is it going to impact public safety? I do realize that our policy now is if you come in and you're going to be hired by us, you have to be vaccinated. So any new firemen and any new policemen and any new folks coming into the city, they have to be vaccinated, correct?
Yes.
So if we implement a mandated policy and those potential 8 people say, thank you, no, thank you, I'm not going to do it, and either we fire them or they resign, anybody new that we hire to replace them is falling under this vaccination policy. And then would we really need a mandated policy if we already have a regular policy that you have to be vaccinated? So would adopting a mandated COVID vaccine procedure really only lead to employees leaving in order for us to really assure that the remainder of employees that are here and employees that we hire will be vaccinated? And then we will have 100% protection and vaccination within our government and our employees. So
So I'm trying to understand where you're going.
I'm,
I've heard some good points for and against.
and that's kind of my problem is I I wavered of good and bad. But if we deal with the mandatory policy, then 8 to 10 people can go, but then as we rehire, those people have to be vaccinated. So I'm now looking at if we were to adopt that policy, that would eventually resolve the concerns of nobody being vaccinated, would it not?
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
before we get that answer? If there is a medical reason why you can't take the vaccine, can we truly not hire somebody for that reason? I'm sorry, we can not hire them?
We would not be, well, there's too many negatives there.
Okay.
If someone has a medical, we'd have to provide them a medical accommodation. We would provide them a medical accommodation. Same would be with the religious accommodations.
Right. So we would have to provide them an accommodation. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so even with this, not necessarily everybody we hire will be vaccinated. That if they come to us and say, I have, and I'm sticking to medical because you can test for that, okay? If they have a medical reason not to take the vaccine, we would still hire them as an accommodation, but subject them to this testing procedure, correct?
Correct. It would be, right, it would. Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing when you're hiring because of when you can ask somebody about their medical stuff, you have to have already given them the offer, et cetera. So, yeah.
So in my view, this current policy that we're considering has the strongest that we can possibly put in. Yes. The one, this is, I consider the one with the mandate to be the one we're considering. The other ones here as an example. This is the strongest thing we are allowed to do by law, as I understand it, as far as mandating a vaccine. My view would be that, again, we should not assume people that get an accommodation, and I'll call it that, are doing it for bad reasons. I mean, obviously, from a medical perspective, they're going to need someone to concur. From a religious perspective, no. But at the same time, I think, again, I know people that honestly believe, that this is not appropriate per their religion. Okay. And so my view is those are fine. We should assume that's what the people are. And if they're not, I'm not sure I want them working here either. Anyway, I mean, do you really want someone who is so insistent for no reason that they know they're in public safety to not be vaccinated unless there's a very, very good reason they're not?
I agree with you. I agree with you. I would not, me personally, I don't understand why people don't get vaccinated when science now, after 2 years,
See, you
has
keep
shown it
saying
works.
that like there is no one that can't get vaccinated. And I'm saying there are
Well-
people that can't get, that's the key difference.
And you're right, medically, high risk, whatever, there are folks that have that.
So I'm basically saying that. Right, but again, I'm basically saying we should do the most protection that we can and assume the people right now that are not vaccinated are either going to get vaccinated or have a legitimate exemption. It would be my view. And if neither of those is true, they won't get vaccinated and they don't have a really good reason other than political or whatever, then my question is, do we want them working in our public safety department to begin with?
Okay,
So that really is where, so I'm for this stringent policy, okay? Because I think it does allow exceptions for the true, and I mean, somebody could hoodwink us, I get that, but look, we can't go into this assuming, because we can't mandate anything more anyway, right? So.
And I'll back up, I'll respond to Greg's comment, and I think it's also about trust. I think that people that they trust our police officers, they trust our first responders, and then when they intercept with them, that they believe that they trust them. So if they're going into their homes for an emergency, the assumption is that they're being taken care of too. If you're having an emergency in your home, you're going to stop and ask your police officer or your first responder or your firefighter, have you been vaccinated? No. I think that it's that our reputation is that we've got a top-notch crew here and employees, and it's not just the officers and the fire first responders, but it's our employees. People walk into the building, they walk up to the front desk. I think that there's a trust issue there.
I have listened to all of you. I watched the media. We just passed 800,000 people have died from COVID-related sicknesses in this country. Hundreds have been police officers. I'm not sure how many have been firefighters that have died, but I know there's quite a few of both. Something that Councilmember Waldman said. So if we lose some of the officers because we have this mandated, that struck me also. But you also said this COVID pandemic is not going away. So if we don't protect our first responders, we protect them from everything else. We give them all the equipment that they need. We give the firefighters the equipment that they need, their gear, their turnout gear, and we're willing to do that. We're willing to protect our residents and our business owners. I'm for this mandate. I have heard, well, there's religious reasons, there's medical reasons, and I don't know. I know that the city manager has talked to other cities. Is there any other reason some of these people are saying they don't want to get this? Is there a reason why? I don't know. The main thing is, I understand people leaving, and we would have a problem if people left, but I would have them rather leave in good health than leave from dying of COVID that they picked up at their place of employment. I've been to too many funerals of city workers, law enforcement, firefighters to not believe in this policy. That's all I have, Mayor.
Then I'm gonna, because I did ask Barb to bring back for conversation just the COVID vaccination testing procedure, just because I just had discomfort. And I wanted to make sure of where we're gonna go and where I'm gonna land as well. And I appreciate the conversation. I think I know where we're going.
When you question about the testing requirement, are you talking about from the draft or from the new one tonight?
No, I was referring from the draft.
Okay.
I was referring from the draft that we had seen last time.
Okay, so that's a first reading?
So we're doing a first reading tonight. And then, and then we'll adopt it next time, right? Yeah, okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to have that conversation. Because it was a very, sometimes it's tough to sit there and want to be a bit more forceful when we're trying to be more mindful role. That's why we call these council meetings. So we talk. That's what you're supposed to do. I appreciate that.
Item number 10 is consideration of certain vehicles as surplus.
Bruce McGregor is unable to be here this evening. He has 3 vehicles that are no longer useful for productive city operations. The newest one, that 2017 Ford Interceptor, has a number of issues, and our mechanic Mike Jackson has suggested that could end up costing us more money if we keep it. Typically, that would be one maybe we would pass down. And then the other 2 from that are under the planning are the 2 Chevrolet Impalas. They are all both at the kind of the end of their useful lives. These cars came from the police department. They started as patrol cars, and they moved then to the planning and community or planning and community development department. And so with that, we would ask that these be declared surplus assets, and then they would be kind of sold as junk, essentially. Bruce did also ask me to make sure that Carlos was on, and to say that, asked to point out that the planning department just can't have anything nice, and that a lot of the cars that come as surplus come from them.
Why is that 2017 vehicle going away?
It has issues, and Chief, do you remember what it is? I can't remember what it is. It has an issue with something that the mechanic has said would cost more money if we were to keep it. We've had more issues kind of with that particular vehicle, I believe, haven't we, or not?
Ford found on the road dead.
He said that I just had a call with him because he knew that they would question why a newer car was being put. Yeah, okay.
That's all right. That's all right.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to declare assets 6953, 1327, and 6952 as surplus.
Second.
Councilmember Carl.
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman,
Yes.
Councilmember Knox,
Yes.
Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor. Motion passed. Item number 11 is the approval of body worn camera Proposal and authorization for the city manager to enter into a 3-year agreement with Turnkey Mobile for hardware, software maintenance in reference to the BWC proposal and equipment.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Ms. Sondag, did you?
Yep.
Okay, you passing that up?
I
Perfect,
am.
thank you.
Bringing her up.
One of the big initiatives of this year with the police department was the addition of body worn cameras to our equipment, to officers' equipment. And so we did have that item in our capital budget was approved. It was actually approved for $65,000 in the capital budget. I also, excuse me, my name is David Wolf. I'm the police chief with the city of Olivet. I also have Detective Sergeant Greg Schneider with me. He does deserve recognition. He was really the one that took the lead on this project and has facilitated a lot of the meetings and coordination of the entities that are involved. And so the department was able to secure a grant through Regis, which is the Regional Justice Information Systems. They are one of the companies that we get all of our criminal data from. We were able to secure a $46,000 grant through them for the front end equipment, which refers to the actual body camera itself, the mount that will attach the camera to the officer, some of the training, the warranty, the licensing, that kind of thing for 3 years. It was fortunate that we were able to get that grant. We had budgeted $65,000. The total cost of the project is actually going to be about $80,000. However, with the grant, we actually we are under budget about $30,000, which is nice. I did have the city manager hand you a new proposal. When I had submitted the documents for the packet, we were still in conversation with Turnkey Mobile, who is, we are mandated to use Turnkey Mobile for the front end equipment. Through the grant, we are mandated to use them. And it made sense to us to also rely on them for the back end equipment, which will be the server where the video files will be stored and so forth. And we had our in-house IT company, Certified Nets, review their initial proposal, which included a server for about $22,000. We did have Certified Nets look at that. We thought that that might have been a little bit of overkill. And so hence the new proposal, which comes in at about $16,000 for that server. We also had looked at some options that we decided not to go with. And we were able to use some more of the grant funds to pay for some of the training that Turnkey Mobile is going to provide, which was on the proposal in your packet. But you'll see that on the proposal that you got tonight, that was revised to less than $500 using some of those grant funds. So we are able to save about an additional, almost an additional $8,000, about $7,500, $7,600. So that will, so all of that together will get us the front end equipment that we need, as well as the back end equipment. Full transparency on this. We are asking for somewhat of a purchasing policy exemption on this because obviously it's over $10,000. So we did not go out for an RFP on this for a variety of reasons. One, per the grant, we were mandated to use Turnkey Mobile for the front end equipment. It really made sense to us to use them for the back end equipment as well. The city already has a maintenance agreement with Turnkey Mobile for our Genetec software, which is the surveillance cameras that are in the building already. So Turnkey is already our Genetec vendor for that. We didn't think that it made sense to add yet another entity there's already 4 entities in this project. There's the police department, there's Regis, there's Turnkey Mobile, and there is Certified Nets, our in-house IT company. And it didn't make sense to add yet another entity to that. And then also we were fortunate enough to have our IT company, our in-house IT company, be able to look at what they were proposing and sort of give a second opinion to that, which obviously in the end did end up saving us a little bit of money. So there is an exemption to the purchasing policy that needs to be, that's a disclaimer as well. So if there are any questions, we would be more than happy to answer them.
Sorry, Missy, sorry. Chief, as I read through here, I see 240 gigabyte on here, which I assume are the size of the disk drives. It's in the second line of the very first item.
Correct.
Are we confident that that's enough storage for what we need?
We are.
Okay, that's fine. That's all
We are.
my only question.
Thank you.
Greg, I have a question for you. Greg, after I get an answer from the chief. So am I reading this correctly that the server is going to be about 15 grand? What, how much is the server?
So the server is that first number. It's that 16,000,
Yeah.
almost 100.
Okay,
So that's what the server that will hold all of the video files will be.
is that a ridiculous price, Greg? I mean, so our internet server said that cost for its own server is a reasonable cost?
Yes.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Did you think that this price of $16,000 was a little bit on the high end, or do you think it's about fair for what they're asking?
Well, there's a lot of other things that come into consideration than just the price of the hardware, which is the support of someone, all of those things. Do I think I could build a cheaper server that would accomplish this? Yes, I do. Is this company going to come in and support it? I don't know. I don't think so. So I can tell you this happens all the time, that you overpay sometimes for a little bit of hardware or something because it keeps it in the program of the people that are using. So I'll leave it at that. I have not tried to think about how I would build a server for this, but I don't know that I would need 16 grand to do it. But at the same time, you're not going to get me to support it, right? Unless I'm going to start a consulting contract and all that kind of stuff. So no. Okay. And so I think in the normal course of business, this is probably a pretty typical price for a server like this.
And then you identified maintenance agreement, that we already have a maintenance agreement. If you already have a maintenance agreement, why are we paying an additional 5 grand?
So the maintenance agreement that we currently have is for the Genetec system, which is the surveillance that's already in the building. This is a maintenance agreement that will cover specifically the body worn camera equipment.
And this is for 3 years.
Correct.
Chief, first of all, I commend you for getting these body worn cameras. I've wanted them for a long time, and I think that they're well overdue. I know at the present time that you or your staff uses audio recorders. Will they continue to do that? They won't use that at all then?
Correct. We will not mandate the use of those audio recorders anymore. It just becomes too much, in my opinion, to try to turn on your digital recorder and then your audio and then your body camera. So we will not mandate the use of those voice recorders anymore.
Okay, and then that leads into my second question. Does the officer have to actually turn the body worn camera on?
So they do. And that was another policy decision that was made. Originally, we were thinking about the officers being able to have those body cameras activate automatically due to certain triggers. That was the original idea. After discussions with command staff, as well as the lieutenants had asked their officers about it, it was decided that we really wanted officers for 2 reasons. One, we wanted officers to really build that muscle memory of turning their cameras on every time. They do it with their digital voice recorders, that they have to turn those on every time. And so we want them to build that muscle memory of making sure that those are actually turned on every time. And the second reason is that we all know technology is not flawless. And so we want to make sure that those are turned on a call. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen 100% of the time. There will be times when, an officer may forget, and then there's, coaching, there's consequences for that. The call may be so, so hot that an officer jumps out of the car and it doesn't get turned, it's not going to be 100%. But we feel that we really want those officers building that muscle memory of making sure that they're turning their body cameras on every call. And that was also, it also saved a little bit of money, which was some of the grant money that then got applied to the training. So they'll be manually activated. That was a
Okay,
long answer, but
And so with that, it does have the capability of, let's say you're not picking up all these, it does have the capability to turn on automatically down the road if you want to.
absolutely.
Okay. And then how long do you expect to have these body cameras before you're gonna have to have them replaced, would you say?
So the warranty and the maintenance agreement that Councilwoman Waldman alluded to is for 3 years. So our goal is to, obviously, we'll keep these body cameras for 3 years. Our goal is to extend the life of our in-car video an additional year, so that the replacement cycle of both systems meshes. So in 3 years, we'll be looking to replace both the body worn cameras and the in-car video, which are 2 different manufacturers now. The plan is to, at that time, go with one manufacturer for both systems, which will help them integrate as well.
And if you have, if these are Panasonic
Correct?
and the laptops in the car, are they still Panasonic?
They are.
Okay, and I think that's all I have. Is there anything you think that we didn't ask, or maybe Sergeant Schneider, is there anything that we didn't?
Anything you want to
Cover.
share?
How long will you hold on to the tapes in these cameras?
The video files themselves? So
That's good. I was gonna ask that.
So Secretary of State mandates that these types of files for a minimum of 30 days. So all files will be held for a minimum of 30 days. After that time, we do have our own, Sergeant Schneider helped develop it. We do have our own internal controls for how long we want to save certain types of files, which we could do 60 days, we could do 90 days. But based on how an officer classifies a file, it can be held, we assign a retention schedule to it. If there's a file that we need to hold indefinitely for evidence or for whatever the internal, for whatever the case may be, we can flag that so that it's never deleted. So it's hard to say, it's gonna vary depending upon the file. Minimum of 30 days for everything. And then certain things will just be a retention schedule that we have set up internally.
And that could be 60 days or 120 or forever.
Forever, correct.
Yeah, you'll know if we're gonna have some kind of litigation.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We have a feel, I mean, we have a feel for it. And the thing is if we have if an officer is on a certain call and they have their body worn cameras on and then they record something, if that becomes a official police report, that file is going to be downloaded and stored on the computer as part of that case file anyway. So even if it were to get deleted out of the body worn camera system, it's still maintained in our drive for the police department that gets backed up, through certified nets and things like that. So we still have that file.
So then, like, it's a DWI and let's say it's got to go to court. Will there be a notification that goes to Detective Schneider to flag that, or who flags that?
Correct.
Okay.
So correct, we have an internal form so that if an officer is on is on a call for service, they anticipate that this is going to be, either a police report or maybe they anticipate a complaint for some reason or something like that. They submit a form to Sergeant Schneider and then he flags it to make sure that it's
Great.
not deleted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, sure. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve of body worn cameras proposal and authorization for the city manager to enter into a 3-year agreement with Turnkey Mobile for hardware, software maintenance in reference to the BWC proposal and equipment.
I second that.
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman,
Yes.
Councilmember Knox,
Yes.
Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. Bless you.
And we read it twice. I only remember reading it once.
It's just an approval.
Oh, I
It's
see.
not a bill.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Item number 12 is ratification of agreement between the City of Olivet and All Inclusive Rec LLC for the purchase of playground equipment in an amount not to exceed $463,091.75.
Okay, as the council is aware, we discussed this at the work session last week. I'm asking for approval to enter into an agreement with Inclusive Rec LLC. This includes the cost for indoor playground equipment at the new community center and the outdoor playground equipment that we'll be purchasing. Yeah, well, I think the mayor, if the mayor
Well,
pro tem would
yes.
assume the role of mayor and ask for a motion.
Oh, yes. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'm sorry, I didn't see the mayor was gone. I was going to give you that opportunity. Madam Pro Tem, I would like to make a motion that we approve an agreement between the City of Olivet and All Inclusive Rec LLC for the purchase of playground equipment in an amount not to exceed $463,091.75.
Do I hear a second? Thank you. Please call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item, please.
13 is hearing from citizens.
Mayor pro tem, we do have someone with their hand raised, Jody. Do you want, Jody? I'll bring her on as a panelist. Oh, she keeps moving.
No. Maybe just do it allowed to talk.
There we go.
There she comes.
There we
Okay.
go.
Jody, you can turn on your, you got her. We,
Yeah. Trying to put my hand down because it went up by mistake. Sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
Well, we moved you over anyway.
That's
Well, it's
right.
good. Well,
Well,
it's nice seeing you.
Okay, kick me back out, please.
I'll do that. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Hey, beam me up.
Beam me up, Scotty.
Okay, she was mortified.
I apologize for that. I would not have done that had I known.
And she couldn't tell us.
Mayor, I see no hands up.
Okay,
We're just gonna
Mr.
move
Mayor, it's
on.
your take over. It's back to you. We're on number 14.
Oh, number 14, review and approval of minutes.
I saw nothing that needed to be, yeah, right. So, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the city council meeting minutes of November 9th, 2021 as written.
Second.
Councilmember Carl,
Here, yes.
Councilmember Waldman.
Yes.
Councilmember Knox.
They're
Oh, he's
road-
gone now? Okay. Yeah. Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor, motion passed. Item number 15 is the city attorney's report.
Mayor, briefly, I want to let the council know that you may recall with regard to the Opus development, the city has agreed to file a lawsuit to declare North Price Road as a public road that's maintained and cared for by the city. And that lawsuit has been filed. We've got a preliminary hearing scheduled for Friday, and hope to get a date in March to have the trial, which would be the evidentiary hearing on the case. And hopefully that'll go according to Hoyle, and judgment should issue shortly after that trial, assuming everything falls into place the way we expect it to. Other than that, I would ask for a closed session for attorney-client communications, for property considerations, and for contract negotiations under section 610-1021, point 1, 2, and 12.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman,
Yes.
Councilmember Knox, Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor, motion passed.
What is with, oh, I can't say
Uh,
that. We're being recorded.
Paul.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Good night, all. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.